A couple of episodes ago, I interviewed Shirley Turner with Reach Northwest about foster care. And while foster care is a necessary and important part of our communities, the number one goal is always to keep children from experiencing abuse and neglect in the first place. Children only go into foster care when there has been a report made to DHS, by which time the child has already experienced abuse or neglect. But what if there was another way? In previous generations, extended families and neighbors often came alongside families in crisis to help provide a system of support. But today, many families live in isolation, and they don't have anyone who can help. And that's where Safe Families for Children comes in. They partner with other families in the community to surround families in crisis to provide a circle of support to the children and the parents so that the family can find healing and restoration before abuse and neglect happens. Today, I'm joined by Deana Vanden Hoek, a Family Coach Supervisor with Safe Families for Children in Yamhill County, which is a part of Lutheran Community Services Northwest, which we'll discuss shortly. She will be sharing how Safe Families for Children works, how it differs from foster care, how the circle of support works, and why this work is so important for our community. And of course, she will also be sharing how you can get involved. Hi, I'm Daniel Roberts, host of the Giving Town podcast, where we share stories about the people and organizations that make Newburgh so great. This podcast is brought to you by my real estate team, the Joyful Roberts Group. We love serving this town and our amazing clients and would be happy to help you with buying or selling a home anywhere around the Newburgh area. If you're interested, you can learn more about us at thejoyfulrobertsgroup.com. And with that, let's get to this episode with Deana Vanden Hoek. Well, Deana, thank you so much for joining me today on the Giving Town podcast. I look forward to talking about Safe Families and how it benefits our community.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm really glad to be here.
You know, before we met, honestly, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I've heard of Lutheran Community Services and what they do, but the Safe Families program I really wasn't familiar with, which I'm always a little bit surprised by, having amazing organizations that, you know, me being having a podcast about nonprofits haven't heard of. So it's been cool as I've been researching, learning about what the organization is, how it helps families. But for other people who may not know what Safe Families is, how it works, could you just give an overview of what the program is, how it got started?
Mm-hmm. So Safe Families is a volunteer-driven movement to support families who are in crisis. It's faith-based. And it was started by a social worker who was working with children in foster care and recognizing that sometimes what those families needed to be able to support and care and keep their children safe were other safe people. And when a parent didn't have another safe person to call when they were sick or they needed some help with something, then that's when abuse and other things happened. Mm. And so as a movement, Safe Families for Children is all over the United States. We are in multiple counties in Oregon, and they've even expanded to several countries, other countries worldwide. I know it's in UK and a couple other places they are beginning to spread into as a model of surrounding vulnerable families as a big, how do I want to say, with the motivation of putting our faith into action.
Yeah. Well, and when did you say it got started? Like when were the origins of it?
It was about 20 years ago.
Okay. So beginning 2000s about, and since then it's expanded nationally and now globally. Mm-hmm. It's really interesting because as we were talking before we started, and we'll get into kind of the connection of how it's different from foster care. Mm-hmm. But I just love that idea of, it takes a village to raise a child. And many times back in, I don't even know what era you'd call it, but a long time ago, that usually was a village, a literal village. You'd have your friends and your family, and you have, maybe 100 people in the entire village. Everyone knew each other. Everyone was intimately involved. And as Americans, we've kind of idolized this sense of independence, like, oh, I can do it all on my own. And whether or not people think that, our society is set up that way, even the way neighborhoods are set up, which is interesting for me being in real estate, seeing all the new types of homes that are built and how they're kind of trying to go back to community setting. But really, like, front yards used to be, everyone would be out on the front yard and their porch and stuff, where now everything's now in the backyard. And it's so isolated, and it's almost like designed to where, like, I don't want to see my neighbors and I don't want to know they're there. And so it's just interesting for people who don't have that, that there obviously is a need, and I imagine a continuing growing need. And so Safe Families, and I guess the full name is Safe Families for Children, right? Mm-hmm. Which I guess is kind of implied. But it's connected to Lutheran Community Services Northwest, which is, I almost see it like a nonprofit conglomerate of, like, they have this giant umbrella. Can you share about LCSNW, which is, I guess, not any much, it's an abbreviation, but it's not any easier to say. Can you share about the umbrella organization and then how Safe Families is connected?
Yes, that's a really great question. So Lutheran Community Services Northwest is part of a larger 3-state organization, and each chapter serves the communities in a variety of ways. Our Yamhill chapter has kind of 3 main components. We have our mental health. So we have a bunch of mental health counselors who support our community in a variety of ways. They're in school, and they are, there's a, online and a physical building that people come to. We also, so that's one kind of, umbrella under the umbrella. And then we have, a family place, which I think you've also had on here, which serves, again, vulnerable families by when families are like, I need help, and they put their hands up. A family place is they come around those families, again, with the idea and the goal. We work together towards the goal of keeping children safe and families together. That's an overarching goal. And then if you were to look at a like continuum of like prevention on one hand and intervention on the other. So we would put a family place in the prevention category, and we're a little sidestep closer to an intervention. So Safe Families lands in, there is an intervention. So the third sort of cup, if you will, of the Lutheran LCS Northwest larger organization is interventions for safe families. And under that umbrella, there's like 9 different programs, and Safe Families for Children is one of those 9.
Okay. So,
and in this arm of Lutheran Community Services, we have case managers, we have peer support specialists, and they administer this variety of programs to really walk alongside people in navigating systems that can be overwhelming, and especially when you're trying to figure out where your next meal is coming from or where you're going to sleep the next night. They provide a wonderful service, and we are a part of that team. As if that makes sense in terms of the larger organization, it's a little confusing.
Yeah, it would be nice to have a chart. I wish, it's audio, but it'd be nice if I had one I could show. But so people can go on your website and find a lot of information about this, right? And that's, I know there's a couple, but if you look under the Lutheran Community Services Northwest or just Safe Families, Yamhill County, then it should come up, and it will lay out everything.
And then I should add, we also do a Safe Route in our Yamhill County office, which is also an amazing program that helps families get through their citizenship process and navigate some of the legal pieces of all of that for folks. So that's also a really wonderful service to our community.
And so that is all under the umbrella of Lutheran Community Services.
Yes.
So the ones I'm most familiar with are Family Place and and now obviously safe families. At what point does someone cross over from, hey, they're maybe using the diaper bank at a family place, or maybe they are going to the preschool that they have there? At what point would someone cross over into safe families for children?
It would be when that family was experiencing a little more of a crisis, and they needed more support than what the family place could provide. Family place does an amazing job of really supporting those children and their families, of giving them so many tools in their parenting toolbox. They do a lot of education, which is wonderful. We're going to be coming along parents who, before we're sort of like before DHS it gets involved. We don't if DHS is involved, then we're not going to take on that family. But if we can get there before that, right, where maybe they are needing a little bit more support, or something comes along that, whether maybe they need to go to rehab, or maybe they even just need to go to the hospital and get a procedure done, but they don't have safe people for their place for their children to go. And in our system now, those families end up going, and their children can actually go into foster care if they have some sort of emergency medical need, and there's not somebody there to step into the gap.
Yeah. Say, for example, say I'm a single parent, I've got 2 kids. Say, for example, I'm in a car accident. I'm in the hospital for 3 weeks for a situation where something like Safe Families would really be beneficial. How does someone go? Because, if I'm, my immediate thought is going to be like, okay, maybe my legs are broken or whatever. I'm kind of incapacitated. My kids are at home. Say I don't have any support system. So what does it look like to actually have the kids then be taken care of?
So in Safe Families for Children, and in that case, I know the hospital would do all they could to locate their next of kin and all of that. That would happen before there would ever be an involvement from us in the situation. But maybe, there is something that's coming up and a caseworker learns of it. They might call us and say, hey, so-and-so is having this coming up, and they don't have any place for their kids to go. Could you step in?
Okay.
So that's kind of where we work really closely with all the agencies.
Okay. So that you work with hospitals, and they know hey, if we can't find anyone, we'll try to call Safe Families for Children.
Yes. We haven't, I'm in the process of developing those relationships with the hospitals, but, we are, definitely working towards being able to set that up and having that be them as well. But most of our referrals at this point are coming from state and local agencies that know about us and refer to us. Okay.
Which kind of goes into the next question about foster care, of where that line is, where someone, the ideal thing is and maybe we can talk about from a practical level we've called Safe Families, some agency has said, hey, this family has expressed they need help. So I guess the first question would be, where's that line between they're getting referred to DHS for foster care versus they're being referred to you?
Yes. So a referral to DHS that ends up in foster care, there has to be some sort of abuse or neglect that is seen, recorded, proved, for lack of a better word, before DHS is gonna step in and remove children. DHS in Oregon anyway really works, at least in our county, they've worked really hard to keep families together as well. So there's not, but But there are times when that is absolutely necessary for the sake of those children, right? And we're not trying to say that that doesn't exist. What we're saying is that for those instances where really it's a family that's toppling, and if we could step in as the church and provide family-like supports, whether that be helping them, helping them pay for, let's say a driver's, let's say their license is not their license, but their, the thing on your your plate, your driver's plate.
Yeah.
Every year you got to pay a certain amount of money.
Like for registration.
Yes, and all of that. So let's say that expires, right? Mm-hmm. It's, for us, it's not a big deal. It's $100, $80. I don't remember exactly what it is, but we pay that. It's not a big deal. But if you're on a limited income, you're having to decide between food for your kids, whether you're going to pay your rent, whether you're going to pay for your phone, and that comes due and you're short of cash and then you don't pay that, then you maybe are driving to work illegally, and then that can spiral really quickly, right? So what we're saying is that what if that family has a group of people around them that is supporting them? They may host their children. Like maybe there are times like somebody is sick and they're gonna host their children, but maybe what they need is a help. Either maybe they'll give them a job to do at their house that helps them earn the money to pay this bill that has all these other impacts. Okay. And so what we're wanting to do is really just put our faith into action. And sometimes it's really hard to even talk about like all the things that are specific, because every family is different. Every situation is different. But Safe Families provides this really beautiful container and way of being able to work as a church body to support people and because we're doing it together, and as a group, it becomes less overwhelming for folks who haven't been, if you haven't grown up with exposure to these kinds of things, it can be a little overwhelming sometimes. Yeah. And it's like, I don't know how to help or what to do. But this way, it gives us a really great way of stepping in and coming alongside families in ways that support their thriving.
Yeah. So it's less about, they're in crisis and their kids need a safe place to be. It's more about families coming around another family in need and just being a general support in multiple ways. Is that right? Yeah.
It could be about the hosting. I mean, because it just, the families come to us in various stages, but our goal is to, if they come to us in crisis and we're able to provide that hosting for a couple of weeks or whatever that's needed, then we're hopeful that they build relationships that carry on and that help them to go in maybe another way, or just to feel like they have, someone to call when they're a little overwhelmed.
One of the things that it makes me think about is, in all of this, even with that phrase, it takes a village to raise a child, all of that comes in the context of community and trust and relationship. How, with something like this, so say there's people who say, they raise their hand and say, I want to be, I want to be a host, or what's the term? Is it a host family or is it a support family? What do you call it?
So we have, there's I brought this just to look at, but you can kind of see, and I can describe this for the people who are listening. So we have, within the churches, if there's a host family here and the family in crisis next door, we also have a ministry lead from that church. We have the church itself. We have family friends who are specific volunteers. We have resource friends and family coaches. And so they all play a role in supporting both the host family, a little like what, is it Shelley? Or who was
with Reach Northwest with Shirley.
Shirley, sorry. With Shirley, where they're supporting those families who are who are opening their homes to foster children, which is such a beautiful gift. In this instance, if we're hosting a child, we're also going to have family friends who may be bringing meals to the host family. We'll have a family coach who will be walking alongside the mom or the family in crisis who's working towards you. When the parents come to us, they tell us what their goals are, and then we help them and walk alongside them to get to their goals.
Okay.
So if their goal is to get their driver's license, or their goal is to complete a piece of education, or sometimes it's around it can be around a whole wide range of things. It could be around finding housing or other kinds of things.
Okay.
So that family coach would be someone who's walking alongside them, helping them fill out paperwork. Like if you don't have a computer, think about how hard it is to fill out paperwork for everything.
Yeah, impossible.
And so they help with that, printing things off, getting things in the mail, getting them to the right place. And if you're in trauma, the other thing is, anybody in trauma, your capacity to think clearly goes down, because that's just how it is with any of us. When we're emotionally elevated, our thinking capacity slows down. And so just having somebody walking alongside saying, okay, this is your goal. Let me walk with you and provide these resources that maybe you don't have access to.
Yeah.
And then the family friends also are going to show up for the kids. We have volunteers who are tutoring and they take the kids to the berry patches this summer, and, just to have exposure to different kinds of things like that. So, we have volunteers that are, driving parents to work, when they don't have a car. And so there's just so many ways in which when we are resourced, can share a little bit without having to do the whole thing, but as a whole, within the context of of your church. And, there's a ministry leader that's very connected with both the church and the volunteers. That's kind of bringing that group together.
Yes. So
works all together.
And I'll see if I can summarize this in a nutshell. So you've got a diagram here. It's called the circle of support. So in the middle, there's the family in crisis and the host family. And then around it, there's a circle, and there's 5 different points with the things you mentioned. So it starts on top with the Safe Families Church. So all these people are going to be within usually the same church, it seems like, who is volunteered to be part of Safe Families for Children. Is that right?
Yes. So we do have several Safe Family churches here in Newburgh. And if you don't end up at that church, or if your church isn't interested or whatever as a church, but you're interested, there's still room for you. We would connect you with one of the churches that are active and that have a ministry leads, just because it's very helpful if you're in a situation and working with someone that you have other resources to draw on.
Well, this makes a lot of sense. So you've got the Safe Families Church, and then next point on the circle is the Family Coach, which you mentioned helps families in crisis. It helps it's small print. So helps family in crisis reach their goals and provide encouragement to the host family. Then you've got a resource friend, and they provide goods and services to the family in need. Then you have a family friend who encourages and supports family in crisis and host family. And you mentioned like taking them out and doing berry patches, like doing life together. And then a ministry lead who communicates with the church, supporting both the Safe Families volunteers and the mission. And honestly, that to me seems like what church was supposed to be. I mean, when you read the book of Acts, 2,000 years ago, when the church first got together, it was people literally doing life together in each other's homes. And I think that was what was really attractive to people about Christianity, and not going just to like a building and hearing a message, but actually being involved in each other's lives and supporting each other. I mean, literally to the point, many listeners maybe aren't familiar with kind of the early church story, but people would literally sell everything they had and they would live life together, and anyone who had a need, they would support them. And, it wasn't that people were just, freeloading, living off of, people still had to work. And, but I think the element of, and people saw community as valuable enough to sell everything they had to be a part of it. And I think that's why the church grew, is because people knew that they were going to have someone who loved them unconditionally and supported them. And sadly, honestly, it feels like we've lost a lot of that. How many churches in Newburgh are a part of Safe Families?
So we have currently 2 very active, a third one that is actually working with one of those churches. And then we are, we have a fourth one that's, we just did a big, volunteer training, and they have a really active group that's, that I'm currently working on getting through the vetting process so that they can also be a Safe Families church.
So, and I don't want to come across as like, shaming or blaming or anything like that. But to me, this seems like, most churches don't have the infrastructure to do something like this on their own. Yet it seems like something every church has families that have need, and every church has families who have something to give. It seems to me like this should be in every church.
I agree.
So what are the main roadblocks? And I know that we don't really prepare to talk about this. What are the main roadblocks that you've seen? Like, why aren't more churches involved? Do they just not know about it, or are they resistant because it's like, this is outside of what we do, or what?
Oh, I know. I think people are very interested. Our Mike, is our kind of a community engagement person, Mike Berry, and he's been very active and doing lots of presentations in the area. Sometimes we have churches where there just aren't people who are home during the day, like to host. Sure. or things like that, or.
But someone could do any one of these, right? Like, couldn't someone be a family coach? Yeah. And they don't have to be a host family, but maybe they can still be involved.
Right. Yep. There's lots of ways to be involved. And that's one of the things I definitely want to highlight, because we can all do something.
Yeah.
And we don't have to do the whole thing. I know for me personally, there have been times when I saw a need, but it seemed like a bigger need than I had the capacity for. And had I had a friend or 2 that we could have surrounded that person, I would have reached out readily.
Yeah.
So I think that that's part of the hesitation sometimes, but this, when we work together, and also like if one church maybe doesn't have all of those roles, but we could work, there's very possible ways that, like I was telling you, like the 2 churches that work together, and then, that just gives both a smaller church, they can work together and still be able to create a circle that supports a family. And the other thing I guess I want to mention is that because of the model like this, we're not trying to do something. A lot of programs, you're in it for 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever, and then then they're then they move on out of the program. And we really, like, a lot of what happens is when those relationships, it doesn't happen with all of them, but they get established and they're still connected. So we started this 7 years ago, and there are lots of people still connected with those families. And so the need for kind of new people to always be stepping forward, because we all only have a certain amount of social energy, I guess, for lack of the word, to give to outside of our own families. But, again, if I can do one piece of things and I can support this one person or these 2 folks, then we can make a difference in the long run together.
Yeah. Do you guys work with Love Inc. at all?
I have met with, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't, I'm one of the volunteers there. Okay. So are you guys one of the programs that we refer to and stuff? Okay. Because what I think is so important about this is it's a more personalized version. Like Love Inc., someone has a need, they come in and, they kind of, in a way, get pushed through the process. There's not really, unless they come to relational ministry, which a lot of people, that's only 1 day a week. And it's, for some people that time doesn't work. For the people who go, it's great, but not everyone can make that time. But one of the things that's important about this is that it's a program. It's a system where it, in some ways that can have a negative connotation, but it's important for not one family to bear the burden of one other struggling family's entire situation. Like you said, most people don't have the social energy and saying, okay, well, they need a rent payment. They need help, with their kids. And it's like, gosh, if I step in and try to help, now I'm getting sucked into it. And now, I'm not going to, have anything left for my own family or anything else. Whereas with this, the way it's set up is that it's a system of support, and there's a lot of families all doing their specific part so that no one is getting overwhelmed with everything. And again, there's few things that I say, I think this needs to be in every church. And, I know you said it's kind of a new thing still. So say someone's, listening to this, they maybe they're in a church and they say, well, my church needs this. Or maybe someone doesn't go to church, but they have a friend who does and say, hey, I think you guys should consider this. How would a church or family, what's that step to get involved, either at a church level or at an individual family level?
So, you would just reach out and let us know. Our contact information, you can, email us at Safe Families. I think it's Safe Families at lcsnorthwest.org. You can call LCS Northwest and just let them know in our office, and they'll get you to us. And what we would want to do is come and make a presentation. And even small groups or small Sunday school groups are really a great place for this to take hold, because you already have those relationships built. And so you're just including another, it becomes a really nice way of you as a group, including another family into your group. So there is training. There's a training and vetting process. It's really important that we are not, we're carefully matching people with vulnerable kids and people. We don't want to bring in someone who maybe looks great on the outside, but is not also a safe person. So there's we do actually 2 background checks. We have a whole process for that training and vetting process for volunteers. And for the families, there's also a screening and vetting process for them. So, because some families' needs may be larger than what a typical person without any training could manage, and that's where we have Reach Northwest, and we have the foster system for families whose needs are bigger, or there's more complicated things but there's just so many things that we can do. And there's so many families kind of in this kind of middle ground where if we can come alongside of them, we can prevent all of the other things happening, for those families and for those children.
So what's a way, and I know I'm kind of stuck on this idea because I kind of have a vision of I want to make this work. I don't know how many people are going to ultimately listen to this, but what I love about it so much is that you're working as a part of a team and you're not taking on the full responsibility. I just think that's the way this is set up. And again, I encourage you, I'm guessing if you go to Safe Families for Children and look up the circle of support, this image would pop up. Because the way it's set up is, I think, just really powerful. So I'm trying to imagine what's a way that someone could have a conversation with their pastor to say, hey, here's this, I heard on the Giving Town podcast about this organization called Safe Families for Children. What's that next step? Because pastors, they've got their whole program set out. Some people have every sermon laid out for a year. Maybe they don't have room, but what would that next step be to say, how do you have that conversation to say, hey, this is important?
Well, they would reach out to us. Mike Berry, who is doing all of our presentations and connecting with the churches and the pastors, would meet with the pastor.
I guess, how do you have the conversation because the pastor would say, oh, well, we don't how do you as a person in the congregation talk to pastor to kind of overcome that initial resistance of something that's new and unfamiliar, that they're thinking, oh no, this is going to, we don't have the capacity for this. I don't want to drive it, whatever.
Yeah. Well, I guess I would want to tell the story. We do have some videos. Sometimes I would maybe even take a video and say, here on our website, you can find those. We've done one recently.
Okay.
Kind of telling our story. And there are some older ones that from other, years that tell the story really beautifully. So that's where I might start, because I think so much of, change really starts with us listening to each other's stories and understanding that, as this person that we look at and maybe they seem, we can judge them in all sorts of ways. If we can learn their story, that changes everything and how we respond.
Because I know every pastor I know has to grapple with those people that come in who have a need, and they're asking for help from the church, but the church doesn't have capacity. And maybe the church says, oh, well, go to Love Inc. and go through their process. And effectively, some do a better job, but some effectively try to just wash the hands of the situation because they don't want to deal with it. And I get it, because, those people can take up a lot of time and energy and resources. And at the same time, that's not what the church is supposed to be. It's the church is supposed to be the place that people can come to and know that they're going to get the help they need. And if that's not what church is, then, it's, I don't want to say pointless, because there's still value, I think. And, let's not get into that, I guess. But, so I think that's helpful. And I'm even thinking, the Newberg, Ministerial Fellowship, which I think is now, the Newberg Ministerial Association, or Yamhill Valley Minister Association. I think they changed their name. And, maybe I know there's kind of have to be, delicate with those things. They don't want every nonprofit coming and saying, hey, every church needs to do this. But, I don't know. I think that's another topic, I guess, for another conversation anyway. Well, thank you for sharing that. I think that's really valuable, knowing that there's videos, which I'll try to have a couple links in the description. If you could email me the links, that'd be great. Yeah. The other thing that, we talked about why it's an important resource for the community. So I won't go into that too much more, because I think it's kind of evident what the need is and how powerful it's been. One of the other things that you had mentioned earlier was the significant cost savings. So say if this organization didn't exist, these kids had to go in foster care. Talk about, some of that cost. What does it cost for foster care?
So I will need that from my sheet here. Yeah, it's pretty stunning, the numbers on that. It's $3,000 is the cost of an initial contact with a child and taken to foster care. And I guess I also want to say this, with the caveat that I believe that no amount of money, every child, would be worth millions of dollars. I don't want to put too much emphasis on not honoring the value of a human. Yeah. But and
I'll get to the heart behind the question is, yes. I'm curious, you mentioned a lot of times agencies will contact you, and I'm just curious if at the state level, because states do have to put numbers on things. They only have so many resources. Yes. And these numbers that we're going to talk about in the tens of thousands of dollars, yes. If they're able to help 10 times as many kids by supporting something like Safe Families, I guess I'll let you talk about the numbers just briefly, and then we can kind of talk about kind of my next part of the question.
Yeah. So the costs that are listed here says it's $30,000 for a complete 2-week placement for over 3 children in the foster care system, and there's $60,000 plus for each placement per year for each child. And again, like, I don't want to diminish the value of those foster families and the work they're doing, but it is something to consider. And again, like, if we know our foster care system is also overburdened, and which means that then there are people and things that don't work quite so well sometimes. So if we can meet the needs of those families that could just have a little support, then we can save the money here, but also really save the trauma and all of the things that come with a child being removed from their family. Because regardless of even if they need it, there is a trauma that comes because we all are made to be connected to our parents. So that's how I would talk about the numbers in terms of, like, it is a value. Like, I don't know. Does that make sense? Like,
it does make sense. Yeah. There's no numerical value that you can place on the safety of a child. Yeah. And what I'm curious about is there any possibility, does Oregon see the value of supporting an organization like this? Yes. If it has it's a much more efficient way of, and here's another part of this question. A lot of times when we talk about government and what they're trying to solve, it's mostly economics. They break everything down into economics. Well, this much money and this many, these many, we have this many people who, need this much money and this kind of thing. And their job really isn't as much. I mean, it's hard because there's no numbers, and it drives economics crazy as the society factors. And some of those might be, well, why are we seeing some of these issues? Mm-hmm. What are some of these systemic issues? And you can really go deep down that rabbit trail very quickly. The society problems of just the way our culture is set up, like the individualization, thinking you have to do everything yourself, our extreme busyness, absent parents, and often specifically it's absent fathers who seem to have an outsized effect on their kids. And that's beyond the scope of anything we can really talk about in this situation. But something like this, having a system of support around a family to help. I mean, even just like an absent parent thing. So many divorces happen because parents are just so overwhelmed they can't handle it anymore, and they don't see any other escape except to leave. And whereas if there were people around them and they could talk to someone that they trust and say, I'm going through this, and have some of those problems be mitigated. And this is me just kind of speculating here, but it just makes me think it's worth supporting. And I don't know if that's even in the realm of possibility. I'm sure you've thought about some of these things too.
Oh yeah. So just another piece is we are a part of an Oregon collaborative. So our Yamhill chapter is a part of a larger Oregon collaborative for safe families. So there are chapters in other counties, and we'd love to spread it into every county, of course. And we work as a group, and we have relationships within the state as a group because they do value what we're doing. And as a collective, it's a very powerful, the stories and what we're being able to do as a collective is really good, really amazing, actually. So, and I wondered if it would be helpful too. I did just to share a story just so that people could sometimes it's easier to relate to that. And I was thinking about mom in particular that I will call Cassie.
Which is funny because it's my mom, my wife's name, actually. So you're not talking about my wife, but Cassie.
I'm not talking about any Cassie in particular, just a name that I pulled out of a hat. And when she got pregnant with her child, that really prompted her. She had been using for a long time, and it prompted her to get clean and to go a different way. And she has been clean and sober for the past 5 years, and she's really working hard to rebuild a life with her child who has some lifelong medical conditions. when she called us, she really was like looking for mentoring, and she just was like, my parents are far away. I really don't have, I'm wanting to build a new life with a new set of friends and a new set of way. And, so we were able to connect her, with a parent mentor, and then the parent mentor is working within a circle of support, right? And they meet regularly in person, a couple times a month, and the other couple times a month they talk on the phone or they're texting back and forth. They were able to help her. The mentor has a degree in education and was able to help this mom with the IEP process as her child enters school. And I went over, and this mom then was able to advocate to get in a better apartment for herself and her son. And that circle came around her and helped her move, helped her set up her washer and dryer. And I went over last week to I brought some like housewarming things to see her new place. And she was like, I have never lived somewhere where I feel like I belong and where I have people to call. Like that's, that is huge. So as a single parent with a child with, special needs, she has people that will listen to her. Yeah. And at the end of the day, that makes a huge, huge difference.
I have kind of two tied questions, and I have way more questions than I originally thought I was going to have. I'll start with, what are some of your goals moving forward as an organization in terms of what you're wanting to do, like kind of where you're at right now and where you hope to be?
Yes. So we are currently currently we're serving 4 families with about 7 children here in Newburgh. And we have hosted over the past year 465 nights. We've also day hosted 59 times for a total of 159 hours. So we are really active. We hope to continue to grow our service. We would love to be serving 36 children by the end of this year. We're well on our way to getting 550 overnight services. We would love to have a solid 8 churches in Newburgh who are providing circles of support. And I would love for our area, if we could have 5 really solid host families and with circles of support around each of them, then we could create a system, an on-call system where we could really be available for spur of the moment emergency hostings. Right now, it takes a little bit of time for me to gather all the pieces together and get them set up. But I think that's, those are some of the goals that we have. Long term, of course, we'd love in by 2026 to be serving maybe 44 children. And we have set some goals around hosting 270 day hostings and 600 overnights, and partnering with 16 churches with circles of support. So that's, we would love to have a wide network of people who are ready to work together to support these families.
Yeah. And where are you right now? This is kind of the second part of the question, capacity wise. You said you have 5 host families right now.
I have, I have 3 host families, and 1 who is being vetted.
Okay. So from a capacity standpoint, before being able to take on more families in crisis, you also need more host families. And basically, those have to grow at the same pace. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the tricky part, right? And actually, we're finding that parents are calling and they're asking more about having a mentor or in that circle of support. And they have, and understandably, nobody wants to give their children to a complete stranger.
Right.
And so as they build relationships, then when something comes up, then they have a relationship with somebody that they can call and trust. So we are also looking for people who are willing to be that person that walks alongside someone and meets with someone, a couple times a month and then stays in touch on the other weeks. So
Yeah.
in a mentoring role more.
I mean, I say this is everyone, like you said, everyone can do something. It would be amazing to see. Yeah, I know a lot of people give their time and energy and efforts to other things. But there's nothing to stop someone from being a volunteer somewhere and being a part of this, because everything, when you break it down, comes to, the family unit, and to be able to be a family coach or a resource friend or a family friend where maybe your capacity is limited. But I think just that sense of community that people have. And because I think even the families helping, like the host family and family coach, resource friend and family friend, and maybe even setting up times for people to do life together. And are there things like that where people, can just get to know each other and kind of build those relationships, or is that going to be on the scope of what? So I'm thinking like, hey, let's have potlucks and get together for, dinner at each other's houses, that kind of thing.
And that's where the ministry lead really comes in to play and pulling that together. That's not something, I can't do that on my 20 hours a week job, but that's why this is really a volunteer movement. We're saying this is people who feel called to walk alongside and to love our neighbors. And so, that's where a ministry lead would pull those things together so that could happen within their circle and the people that they're serving in that way.
And I'm guessing there are probably administrative costs and financial, do you guys, need financial support too? And where does that come from now?
Yes. So that is, we're always in looking for, just like every nonprofit, there is the process of paying our salaries so that we can be there to support the volunteers. Currently I think we have some grants that are funding us. But we're really wanting to build our donor base in our community here and in our county overall, because, and again, every little bit helps.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Have you come to my mind, because I'm on the foundation board for the Newburgh Noon Rotary Club, and our mission is supporting children and families in Newburgh. So if you're interested, that'd be a separate conversation to come and speak there. And I'm sure we would be happy to write you a check. In Kiwanis Club, same thing. Mm-hmm. I know the Austin Family Foundation, they have a lot of small grants that they need for single mothers. If you support single mothers through Optimist, maybe that, I know if their scope quite includes that. So I know there's a lot.
Yes.
But thank you so much for everything you shared. One last question that I will ask, given your position and you're in the middle of a lot of families in need around Newburgh, what gives you hope for the future? And I'll say specifically for the future of Newburgh as it relates to the families.
Yes. I think what gives me hope for the future is our capacity as lovers of God and followers of Him to really walk along to, I guess, how do I want to say this? Hard to put for me to put it. I feel it inside of me. It's hard to put into words. I feel like our collective capacity to care for one another is a really beautiful thing. And it's so inspiring to me to see both what the volunteers do and coming alongside the families. But these families are amazing humans. I didn't get to talk about that part very much, but they have come through so many things, and they're resilient and they bring strengths. And so it is a beautiful thing to see somebody be able to grow, because we cared enough to show up. And that gives me a lot of hope. because I think that we can together do way more than we can do by ourselves.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Deana. It's been wonderful getting to talk to you and learn more about this amazing program. I look forward to spreading it across Newburgh and beyond.
Thank you. Can I add one more thing?
Sure.
Because I'm looking at my list, and Emily told me to make sure I said to mention, but we do have a fall fundraiser that will be coming up. So that will be being splashed and be going out to churches. So if people are interested in the donation piece of things, there will be opportunity to give in that way as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Giving Town podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with a friend who you think might benefit from hearing it. While more and more people are continuing to hear about this podcast, I still need your help to spread the message about all the people and organizations that make Newburgh so great. Well, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next episode.